Are you really prepared? Prepared for what, cowboy? Well, I'm asking you if you're prepared for disaster scenarios. And I want to go through and talk about 5 that I think, when I was doing some research on this, I'm like, hey, what are the big ones? And these are some that came up. And I just want to put this on, I guess, on your radar and maybe talk a little bit about what you can do to prepare. Only because I could go in a lot more detail on this and make a long video. I'm not going to make a long video because it's all in the blog that you can go to by just clicking on the link. So let's go through and talk about this, because this is something you need to know. From RX Healthy Habits, I'm concerned about helping people stay healthy. And one of the things that I think there's a blind spot with people realizing that natural disasters can have a huge impact on your health no matter where you are on the health spectrum. Like if you're fragile or feeble, or if you're really in good shape, doesn't matter. That doesn't discriminate. So let's go through and talk about that. Weather disasters. Nobody ignorant to some of the horrible things that take place with weather disasters. And that's, I guess, the number one I think you need to prepare for, because it's so frequent. If you look at it, here's a quick one. 2022, there's 24,000 deaths in Europe because of the heat waves. In 2023, in Turkey and Syria, there's 59,000 deaths because of earthquakes. And in South African floods in 2020, there's 6,500 lives lost. Now we can go through a whole litany of disasters, natural disasters, where Mother Nature sometimes takes a turn that it really affects so many thousands of people. But here's some quick prep tips, easy for me to say, right? Emergency kit. You have to have one ready to go, especially if you have to bug out, let's say, and go someplace, especially in a weather situation. You have to have an evacuation plan. How you're going to get out and where you're going to go, right? How you're going to get there. And you should be monitoring the weather, especially when some of these storms are approaching. And especially if there's a sudden situation, there's a lot of channels you can turn to. Number 2, power outages. There's a lot of people who experience this in their lifetime. And they said last year alone, 67% of the households experience a power outage. Now, usually they're short term, right? It's not very big deal. Some parts of the country, you can have sustained power outages because of all kinds of reasons. It doesn't necessarily just have to be because of weather related. And worried about, and some of the people that are experts out there are saying what the vulnerability for our grid right now is a concern. There's other things that can knock out power. But do you have, here's the tip then for some strategies. Do you have any backup power sources? That's one to think about, even for powering some of your simple devices for communication. And there's a lot of solar options out there right now. Do you have non-perishable supplies? If the power goes out and you have no refrigeration, do you have any non-perishables that you can rely on? We're not even going to talk about water, but you need to make sure you can secure water. Communication backup. How are you going to communicate with those that you love if there's no power, there's no cell towers? All questions to ask yourself. Here's one, number 3, civil unrest. We've seen some of these examples where there's demonstrations that go sideways, and what happens is sometimes there's some really unpredictable events that occur. That can affect a lot of things, like being able to get stuff at the store, banking. Maybe you don't really have a group of people that you live near that have any community. You can work together in bad times, protect each other. Should be something you think about. Number 4, natural disasters. Now this is one that should be on your radar, and you know about this from COVID when that struck. Now, we could take all different sides of point of views on that as far as how it was handled, but here's the thing. It resulted in 1 million deaths, right? So, but 26% of the people today still have a plan for preparedness for a national disaster like that, but only 26%, and I gotta tell you, their plan's probably pretty meager. Here's another one. 100 plus nuclear material incidents have occurred where there's been some nuclear material has been unaccounted for 100 different times, now at different levels. The point
in a nuclear accident in the Soviet Union at
the Nobles Reactor 4, the scene of the total meltdown.
That explosion at a nuclear plant in the Soviet Union.
The point is, nuclear type materials for dirty bombs and nuclear bombs are very, very scary in terrorist hands. And are you prepared for anything in that scenario? Probably not even on your radar. Number 5 is, how are you going to survive maybe some extreme scenarios that continue on that protract? Well, it's very, very difficult for anybody to do. Some of the preppers have some things, but even they'll tell you can't prepare for everything. You can just be prepared as much as you can be for what you think might be the common scenarios. Self-sufficiency skills, technological disruption, readiness, when your technology totally fails, what's going to be your go-to? And your flexible emergency planning, which means you say, I plan on never having to leave my house. Well, you got to think about, you may have to. Bugging in or bugging out, that's important. So I'm going to go through and close with this. In my blog, there's a whole bunch of things on universal preparedness checklists. There's a whole bunch of good articles in there. I'm going to recommend you go there because I don't like long videos. And all I can tell you is the best thing I can stress with you is, if you really do cherish your health, then make sure you spend some time thinking about how you can prepare for a disaster scenario. God bless.